Welcome back to Popcorn Corner, I'm Dan Draper, and today I'm going to be rounding up the last few films that I saw in 2024 and kick off 2025 in style. Now, Wicked was exactly what you thought it would be. It was an all-singing, all-dancing extravaganza with Cynthia Erivo playing the Wicked Witch Elphaba and Ariana Grande as Glinda. And the two worked really well together on camera actually, and Ariana Grande's comedic timing was brilliant. It proper had me belly laughing. I mean, all the actors were good though. I mean, Jonathan Bailey as that Prince Charming type character worked perfectly, and that man can sing as well. Michelle Yeoh was perfect as Madame Morrible, and Jeff Goldblum being, well, Jeff Goldblum, but with a slightly darker twist was lovely to see. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I am looking forward to seeing part 2, but I need to get Defying Gravity and the other battle cry that comes at the end of it just out of my head for a little while. It's been on socials too much recently. Next up, we've got Conclave, which I must admit we had a few issues with in the cinema. It kind of broke twice. The film started playing and then stopped about 10 minutes in, which then took 20 minutes to fix for us to then watch another 10 minutes, for it to then break down again for another 40 minutes whilst they were resetting it, which, I mean, was less than ideal, but I did use it as a toilet break. It was fine. The film itself, though, was really good. Ralph Fiennes was mesmerising as Lawrence, who's the second in command and took over the church after the Pope died mysteriously but suspiciously, which is where this film ramps up. Because they have to start the selection process for a new Pope as per tradition with a vote. And this is where we see a lot of simmering tension and tactics play out, with all the characters having some sort of dirt on each other and exploiting their fellow priests. It was great. And the cast for this was massive as well. Stanley Tucci plays a conflicted number 3 in order of succession named Bellini. John Lithgow plays the slightly sinister Tremblay, who no one wants to be the next Pope. And Lucian Masatmi, who plays the devilish priest Adeyemi, who has a lot of secrets. They were all brilliant in their respective roles. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. It was a great watch, but I just wish there was a bit more as I was waiting for it to boil over at some point rather than just a gentle simmer all the way through. Next up, one of my personal favourites on the list was the incredibly exciting hit that both adults and kids loved, Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Alright, we got a rogue alien on the loose. How do we find it?
Start with a giant fireball?
I love it. Let's start with a giant fireball.
He is much more impressive than the hedgehog I fought previously.
Dude, I'm standing right here.
You're a colorful bunch.
This film was action from the get-go and didn't stop to take a breath. The story follows our 3 furry friends who have a new foe in the shape of Shadow, voiced by the legendary Keanu Reeves, who's been kept in suspension by the military for over 50 years and of course is now awake and seeking revenge. Shadow travels to a nearby city after escaping the government facility and just wants to be left alone, but the government has other plans and enlists the help of Sonic, Knuckles and Tails to stop him. This doesn't quite go to plan though, as Shadow's abilities are far beyond anybody else's and easily defeats our heroes. With our heroes licking their wounds, they're forced into asking help from none other than their arch nemesis Dr. Robotnik, played by the sensational Jim Carrey, who is so good in this film, who's looking a little worse for wear though, I must admit, after their previous encounter in their last film. They entice Robotnik to help them and they start off their mission to take Shadow down, but there's a shock revelation that hits Robotnik in this abandoned facility that they are checking out. Now, what could it be? Well, obviously there's 2 Robotniks. Double the trouble and double the carry. I wonder if he did get double the pay though. Anyways, Robotnik meets his grandfather, who originally worked at the facility all those years ago, and they have a bit of a family reunion before they devise a plan to turn on Sonic and friends. Ultimately they do, and both Robotniks and Shadow are now looking to seek revenge on the world, and they launch this big old machine into space with huge lasers on it, which of course piqued my interest growing up in the 90s, pretty much every film. But one of the best parts of this film was the backstory of Shadow. He's such a complex character that has a lot of pain and trauma that he's just had to deal with and replay over in his head over and over again for 50 years, and naturally wants to take it out on the world. The human characters make a very short cameo in this film, but poor old James Marsden does get the worst of it by taking a full power punch from Shadow that almost kills him, which sends Sonic into a rage. Sonic goes off to track down the Chaos Emerald and broke the pact that him and Knuckles and Tails had in this process and went after Shadow in his supersonic form. Initially, Sonic had the upper hand, but Shadow just proved too powerful and then went super himself. It was a lot. As they do with these kids' films though, Sonic and Shadow realise how similar they are, put their differences to one side to take on the Robotniks. But the Robotnik that we know and loathe
entirely,
has also turned on his grandfather, as he was actually going to try and destroy the entire planet. Now they do manage to stop this from happening and everyone becomes happy families again, but Shadow is missing. This film was honestly great though, and was like the first two films that had just been dialed up. And as I said, a double dose of Carey never hurt anyone. I am going to give this a 4 out of 5. It just needs a few less puns in it, but I kind of get it. Next up, I'm looking at one of the most iconic musicians ever to grace the planet. And of course, I'm talking about the story of Bob Dylan, a complete unknown.
You tramped all the way from Minnesota. Why is that?
I wanted to catch a spark.
When's the new album out?
Soon. 200 people in that room, and each one wants me to be somebody else. They should just let me be.
Let you be what?
Whatever it is they don't want me to be.
Now I'm going to be completely honest with this one. I did miss the first 10 minutes of the film because I was parking up. There was nowhere to park, and I also needed to snack. So you always need cinema snacks. This biopic stars Timothée Chalamet as the folk legend, focusing on his early years as an artist from 1961 to 1965. So where I picked up the film from was where he was hitchhiking his way from Minnesota to New York to meet the legendary Woody Guthrie, who was one of his idols. And he also bumps into Pete Seeger, played by the incredible, and I mean incredible, Edward Norton. If that man doesn't get an Oscar for his role, there's a travesty. And Pete asked Bob to play them a song, and they were both blown away. Pete takes him under his wing and helps him into the industry, and as the film carries on, Bob's personality and arrogance really starts to show, and his ego builds him into this godlike character in his head and a law unto himself, and he forgets where he comes from. We see in the film how Bob changes his musical style from just folk, which is tired of, to be honest with you, to a more rock style, which upset a lot of people back in the day, as he was one of the biggest folk stars of the 60s. There were a few artists in there as well that kind of made you go, whoop, whoop. Timothée Chalamet really was spot on playing Bob though, and really took the small details into account, which pleased a lot of fans. I must admit, I don't know too much about Bob Dylan or much of his music, but this one was definitely for the fans. It was an incredible watch, and some of the stats at the end of this film in terms of his album sales are staggering. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 purely because I prioritised snacks over the beginning of the film firstly, but there wasn't a huge drama like there has been in other biopics, and as I said before, this was definitely one for the fans. I'm just not there. However, I do appreciate the contribution to music, Bob, so thank you. And last by no means least, my favourite film out of all of these, the impeccable We Live in Time, starring Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh in, quite honestly, one of the best rom-coms I've ever seen.
What's happened to my underwear?
Oh, I literally have no idea.
So sorry, but do we know each other?
Yeah, no, I ran you over. Sorry.
It's all right. I am guilty of looking ahead instead of right in front of me. At you.
Is it? I'm fine to walk, honestly.
This is ridiculous.
The chemistry between these two was insane, and it really came over on screen, proving that these two are some of the best working actors out there. So the synopsis of this film is Andrew's character, Tobias, gets hit by a car driven by Albert, Florence's character, which lands Tobias in hospital. Now he wakes up dazed and confused, even more so when Albert tells him that she hit him and felt so bad that she stayed. I mean, I kind of get that though at the same time. This is where their love story then starts to blossom though, and we see their life journey play out from different career choices to having a baby and literally everything in between. There is a sadness to this story though, with Alma developing terminal cancer, and watching her go from diagnosis to end of life is a really tough watch. This film is side-splittingly funny though, and relatable. It's literally like it could be your neighbours next door, and it's the perfect rom-com. Although I will say, grab some tissues for the final scenes. As I said, it gets quite emotional, and there was a girl next to us that literally sobbing, it was a lot. I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5. Honestly, it's that good. And I almost told Andrew Garfield himself when I was shocked to see him in person, but I chickened out. I mean, it's Andrew Garfield. Come on, give me a break. That's all from me, and I'll see you next time.